Well, Grenada is a small island developing state. As one of the islands in the Caribbean archipelago, we are exposed to a lot of disasters.
Philippines is very prone to disasters, and usually we experience 20 to 24 typhoons in a year and several earthquakes.
My country is year in, year out facing disasters, mostly floods and dry spells.
Indonesia, we are supermarket of disaster. We have more than 12 perils. We have flood, we have earthquake, we have tsunami, we have forest fire, we have landslide and everything.
Bangladesh is a risk-prone country. The disaster hits us quite often. So there is a resource gap for risk financing.
Because the Nankai Trough earthquake, the potential loss for the immediate need is like 200 billion US dollars terms.
We tend to look at health, education, and some of the social sectors to really prioritize our budgets.
After the disaster happens, it takes like up to 4 or 5 months before we get the assistance. But what we need is that to address the needs of the people being affected, the funds needs to be there as soon as possible.
Disaster aid is often uncertain. There's real volatility and risk to relying entirely on disaster aid.
Disaster risk finance helps us to put in place the mechanism to manage the risk as posed by disasters.
Financing after the fact is costly than planning way ahead.
And financial resilience is important. Disaster risk financing is important because otherwise it will relate to or it will mean the diversion of funds from other sectoral and economic, social sectors for disaster risk financing.
The more insurance is available, the quicker the payouts tend to occur, the more complete the recoveries are, and it also helps to stem humanitarian suffering.
We have a financing gap, so we need to mobilize the financing either domestically or externally to manage the disaster risk more effectively and to make it sustainable.
The type of knowledge you need to model risk well, to plan for it, not just the financial transfer, but to plan for it, that type of scientific knowledge is actually an extensive investment in risk quantification and then in modelling and pricing what risk might do in your country and how you'll manage it.
To make a good decision, we have to know what kind of information needed to make a decision. And to make a good information, we have to know what kind of data that required. And we have to do the stock taking, what kind of data that we have.
The quantitative tools and the information is really important, and we've recognized the need for it. Recently, we've been investing in developing our national spatial data infrastructure. We've been undertaking some LiDAR studies, doing some really interesting data mapping with the hydrologic information that we've collected over the years. And we're seeing how we can actually look at our risk profile and modeling it even more effectively to make decisions.
The data needs to speak to you, and you have to find a way to make it relevant. There are a lot of information, a lot of data available, but you have to contextualize it, make it relevant for your situation.
I have learned a lot of things, but important that we need to have knowledge for the risk. We need to have knowledge for the data process because it's important to use the analysis of this information to give us the real picture for our countries. That is fundamental we use for our financing instruments in Mozambique.
But coming together and sitting down, sharing experiences, brings to the fore a lot of things. As they say, you learn a lot better from your peers than sitting in a lecture room. So I find this very, very important.
We're very happy to be able to both learn from some which are more advanced in their DRM and DRF paths, such as Mexico, wonderful example, Philippines as well, but also to be able to, I think, share the lessons learned, the challenges that we encountered on our way here, hoping that those a bit behind us can learn from our mistakes and hopefully not make them in the future.
The thing that I really liked is how to address or influence your stakeholders, and that was the key. learning how to strategize to bring them in, to understand the importance of, or at least convince them in why disaster risk financing planning is very important.
I think 1 week in Cambridge give me fundamental knowledge about disaster risk financing and also some very useful case study from other countries in the world. So when I come back to my country, this knowledge will help me much in the future work.
I have seen that most of the countries of the world are experiencing similar stories with Chile at different stages. So I think the experience of the other countries is invaluable in this regard.
The awareness is already there because people have experienced the most devastating disasters. And now the challenge is how to put our heads together and move forward by implementing the programs and projects for risk reduction as well as climate resilience, and making sure that there are funds that are sufficient to be able to implement and deliver those programs.